Hey everybody, it's Professor Parish, and I'm recording our week 16 video a little bit early because I understand that this coming week, week 16, is Thanksgiving week, so many of you will be traveling to see family or you may have plans throughout the week. So I wanted to go ahead and record this video so that you could go ahead if you wanted to and start on this week's assignment a little bit early. The good news is that there's only one assignment this week. So considering that your Thanksgiving Day present or Black Friday or however you want to word it. So we have this week, week 16. We have the week afterwards for 17, which I'll talk about a little bit this week, but I'll save most of that for next week's video. And then the week after that's finals. So this class is wrapping up rather quickly. So far, I've looked at everybody's topics. They all look great. I've probably addressed those topics to you, talked about what to do for the outline. The outlines I've seen so far look great. Please make sure to submit that outline. If for some reason I did not get a thesis assignment from you, there are a few students that didn't turn in a thesis for their last paper. I definitely want to make sure that you submit an outline because you need to have some kind of structure in place for this paper because it will sneak up on you. We still have at this point about 3 weeks to write it, but by the time you watch this video, that's going to be down to about 2.5 weeks. Or if you watch it later in week 16 around Thanksgiving, that leaves you about 2 weeks. So I want to make sure that you don't have this paper sneak up on you and suddenly you have all of these pages to write and you're like, what do I write about? So make sure that you do the outline assignment and get week 15's assignments done. And I posted that video earlier on Sunday of last week. So with that being said, I'm going to minimize myself over here. I'm back. And we're going to talk about the annotated bibliography, which is an assignment than it actually is. So what I'm going to do is go here to the content and kind of just before I get into the resources and actually pull up the presentation, I want to show you all, as I'm recording this, we are still in the process of week 15. Make sure you've submitted that outline. Make sure you do that discussion forum. And then for this week, everybody at this point should have their drafts graded for paper 3. So I am asking this coming weekend that paper 3 revisions, you do submit them by Sunday, December 1st. By I know that says 11:30. If you submit it by 11:55, it's okay. As long as I get them by Sunday night. I will count those revisions for paper 3 if you want to do those. The only assignment we have this week, other than continuing to work on paper 4, is to do the annotated bibliography. So I'm about to go over the presentation, and that assignment is going to be due Sunday as well. So you don't have any discussion forum this week, and you don't have any other assignments other than the annotated bibliography. And there's a little bit of a note about it here, but I'm going to go over that and kind of talk a little bit about extra credit too with this assignment. As you can see here, our campus is going to be closed from Wednesday, so I will obviously have access to my computer so I can answer emails if you have them. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving. It's a time where most of us visit friends or we visit family, so I may or may not answer your questions on Thanksgiving. It depends on how our family conversations go, which, you know, like you do. But I will get back to you if you have any questions about the assignment. Obviously, if they're related to watching this video, I'll request that you do that. But let's talk about the annotated bibliography. This is an assignment that will probably pop up in other classes as you go through college. If you go on to get your bachelor's or master's, you will likely do an annotated bibliography. So I think it's important that we do one now. And also, I find annotated bibliographies extremely helpful, and when I show you this presentation, you'll probably see why. So in our week 15 section of our resources, or week 16 rather, we have this presentation, this PowerPoint on annotated bibliographies. And I will pull it up here and we'll go through it. So the idea behind an annotated bibliography, a bibliography is just a fancy way of saying a works cited page. And we've been doing those throughout the semester. Some of you have maybe cited one source, some of you have cited other sources, but the idea has remained the same. The fact is that your annotated bibliography is basically just designed to show your sources and then talk about them. So as you can see here, An annotation it's just you summarizing information. If you've ever looked up a journal article online, rather than them showing you the entire article, you might have gotten what's called an abstract, and that's just a little paragraph of information summarizing what the source is about. That is an annotation. That abstract is an annotation where it talks about the source, how it's relevant, and what that information can be used for. So it's kind of like a little brief summary of the source, but we're going to be a little more specific in our assignment. So with annotations, the idea is that you start out by citing your source in MLA. That is the main idea. And then you skip a space, kind of like what I've done here. I've skipped a space between this part and this part. And after you skip a space, you write a small paragraph about your source where you summarize its content, talk about how it's useful, and establish why it's credible. So the annotation is nice because as you're researching sources, it's a way for you to check yourself and make sure those sources are going to be relevant to you. Because I was in college. I know that for some of my papers, I had to have a source, and I just got on Google, and the first source that popped up, I was like, I'm going to use that one. And then once you actually get to reading it, you're like, this source is not going to work. So you have to go back to the drawing board and start all over again. So what this assignment is doing is just checking you and making sure the sources that you're picking for your paper are going to work. So obviously, you can cite our textbook for this assignment. The textbook can be one of your sources that you annotate, and you can cite the textbook in MLA, and then in your paragraph you can say, hey, I'm using the textbook because it talks about poetry and my whole paper is about a poet, so I'm going to use the textbook to define poetry terminology. That's summarizing. You can say it's going to be useful in the body paragraphs of my work, especially when I talk about poetry terminology. That's describing how it's useful. And then finally, you can say it is an English textbook used in a college curriculum and written by authors that are knowledgeable about the subject matter. That establishes credibility. So you talk about what the source is, how you're going to use it in your paper, and why it's credible. So the what, how, and why. So that's pretty much it. So for example, here is a sample annotation. And what I've done here, I'll pull myself back up. Oh no, where am I? There I am. I lost my box for a second. So here is an example annotation that I have. So I have this is an article off of a website that I'm citing here. So I have my author, Smith, John. So I have John Smith as my author. I have my title of the article in quotation marks. I have the website, so it's sample.com. I have the website in italics, and then the publisher. And the publisher is Sample Publisher. We talked about this in the MLA presentation. Your publisher and your website are probably going to be about the same. Then I have the date published, and then I have the link to the article. So I've got my citation right here, like you would normally do for a works cited page. And then below, I explain in one sentence what the article is about. In the second sentence, I explain how it's credible. And in the third sentence, I explain how I'm going to use it. So I'm not going to give you a word count on these, but you have to answer those 3 questions. So if your annotated bibliography, if your annotation is 3 sentences, as long as those 3 sentences are answering the 3 parts they need to, that's fine. If we were in a graduate course, like I did a graduate course once where we had to do this type of assignment, and those were like a page per source. They were really expanded upon. I don't want to do that for this. Just 3 questions for each of your sources. Answer those 3 questions. If it takes you 3 sentences, if it takes you 3 paragraphs, however much text you need to answer that is fine. And you'll note here that I say summaries will likely be longer with real sources. Usually the credibility and how you're going to use the source, that's usually 1 sentence each. But some students like to give me a few more sentences to explain the content of the source, and that's totally fine. As far as things about the bibliography, it's basically just a collection of these annotations. You do list them in alphabetical order by citation, like you would on an actual works cited page. So you would list them by either author, last name, or if there's no author, by the title. You just put them in alphabetical order. So for this assignment, what you're going to be doing is at least 4 sources you need to be citing, because your paper requires you to have 4 sources. So you need to annotate 4 sources and explain summaries for each, how you're going to use that source, and why they're credible. And basically, this assignment is going to be out of 40 points. So I'm giving you 10 points. I'm giving you points for the citation themselves. Is it in proper MLA? I'm giving you points for whether you answer the 3 questions. If you leave one of these 3 out, I'm going to deduct points. So as long as you include these 3 pieces of information and you cite the source correctly, it should be an easy set of points. Now, I will say this, make sure you put them in alphabetical order. And finally, this is officially our last chance for extra credit. So, as I noted up here, you have to do 4 sources for the assignment. Any extra source, I'm going to type it down here, any extra source annotation is extra credit. So you may be thinking to yourself, well, how much extra credit? I'm going to give you several points for each additional one that you do. I'll be honest, I had a student once that cited 10 extra sources, and I gave them quite a bit of extra credit since they did that many, and they took the time to do each of these 3 parts and the MLA for them as well. So if you're citing more than 4 sources in your paper, go ahead and cite those sources here too. Get those extra credit points. Any extra ones I will give extra credit for. And if you accidentally miss something in one of those original 4, this extra credit can help make up for that. So, but this will be pretty much, other than the paper 3 revisions, this is really our last chance for extra credit in the class. So I would take advantage of it if you can. If you don't need any extra credit and your grade is great, then don't worry about it. But if you're someone that's trying to raise your grade, I would highly take advantage of this, because it's an easy way to get extra credit in this class and raise your grade. As far as the sources that you use for this assignment, these are not set in stone. If you find 4 sources for this annotated bibliography assignment, and then as you're writing your paper, you suddenly realize, oh, that's that 3rd source in my annotated bibliography, I don't think I'm going to use it in my paper. That's fine. You don't have to. This assignment here is its own thing. What you can do is that when I give you this assignment back, I'm going to have your actual citations, the MLA part. Let me find that example. This part right here, I'll have graded that part. So if you want to copy and paste your MLA citations from your graded annotated bibliography onto your final paper, you can go ahead and do that. You do not need to include this annotation in your final paper, though. You don't need that part. You just might want to copy and paste the citations into your final paper. You won't need the annotation part. And if you do that, I'll correct it when we do our peer review. So, like I said, 4 sources. Tell me what they're about, how they're credible, how you plan to use them in your paper, and if you do any extras, those are extra credit. So, and you have to cite them in MLA. So as long as you go through this presentation and just follow the example here, you're going to be fine. This is usually a pretty simple assignment that gives you all a lot of chance to get some extra credit points as well. Okay, so that's the only assignment due this week. It's not due till Sunday, December 1st, but if you want to go ahead and get it done so that you have a nice long Thanksgiving break without having to worry about it, go ahead and do that, and that would be great. And that way I can also maybe grade them ahead of time and get you that feedback as you're working on your final paper. All right? So as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, the topics everybody has been picking look great. I've been really excited based on the outlines that I've seen so far, and I know I'm going to be excited when we talk about in week 17 the peer review and our final stretch into the rest of the semester. All right. As always, if you have questions, let me know, but I'm going to peace out this video and turn it off, and have a great week and have a happy Thanksgiving. Safe travels. All right.